Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jenn Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
If you're gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Why, hey there, my fabulous listener. Welcome to episode 252 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you, as always, and every episode for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I do appreciate you making my podcast one of them. If you are enjoying this podcast, though, I would love the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better by being able to, I guess, follow you on socials as well. So if you take a screenshot of you listening to this or a selfie of you listening to this and tag me on social media at Jenn Donovan, then I think that would be pretty cool. If there's anything that is mentioned in this podcast that you want to look deeper into, you can, of course, go to the show notes for this episode, which can be found at all the W's, socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/252. Before we get into this week's episode, though, did you get a chance to listen to last week's episode? It was 3 tips on how to produce content when your content bucket is empty. Content is something we have to constantly produce as small business owners, and the episode last week was all about helping you fill your content bucket up again. You can listen to that one. Of course, that was episode 251, when, of course, you've finished listening to this episode. Before I get started, I just wanted to give a shout out to this week's podcast sponsor, Kate Toon.
Hi, Kate Toon here, just jumping into Jen's podcast to tell you about my new book, 6 Figures in School Hours, How to Run a Successful Business and Still Be a Good Parent. It's packed with practical and doable tips for parents to be more productive, make serious money, and not burn themselves to a frazzle in the process, with actionable advice and inspiring stories to help you create a successful business and never feel like the worst parent in the world ever again. Order today at 6figuresinSchoolhours.com.
But my guest today is Kate Christie. Kate was actually a guest on my podcast way back in episode 31. Yes, my very first year of podcasting, Kate was lovely enough to come on my podcast and talk about time management. She's a time management specialist, and that's what she spoke about on that episode. So head back there and have a listen to episode 31 if you want to hear more of Kate and I. But today we're actually chatting about something slightly different. So Kate has recently written a book called The Life List: Master Every Moment and Live an Audacious Life. Her book is about having a life list rather than a bucket list. And the difference between the two, she does actually explain to us on the podcast today. So Kate and I are talking all about basically your life by design. And we only have one, and I'm not sure about you, but at 48, I'm definitely wanting to design my life around things that light me up, bring me joy, and surround myself with my loves. So, chat is a little bit business centered, yes, to a certain degree, but it's also about you. So, grab yourself a cuppa or push those earbuds in a little bit further, because this is a fabulous chat, and I know you are just going to love everything Kate has to say. Her book, which I'm currently rereading while I'm on holidays, can be found on Booktopia and also Amazon. But there's a link in the show notes to her book as well if you're interested in grabbing yourself a copy. Highly recommend it. But here's my chat with Kate. Kate Christie, I'm excited to have you back on the podcast. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Jenn. It's always so lovely to talk to you. I look forward to our chats.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe. So it was episode 31. So I was a very green podcaster all the way back then, reaching out to anyone and everyone that I knew that could provide amazing value. So I'm excited 200 episodes on to have you back again.
I'm glad I made the cut a second time. Imagine if I never heard from you again.
No, that's the power of the podcast, the power of the podcast. Beautiful. Now, Kate, for my listener who would like to know a little bit more about you or may not have listened to episode 31 and want to know about you, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am a businesswoman. I am very, very passionate about women in business. I am a time management expert and everything from how to find extra time to then, once you have your time under control, how you're going to use that time, creating a life by design, a business by design. And so I'm an author. I have 5 books. I am a coach and a global speaker and consultant. And I work with high performing teams and individuals to help them find all the time in the world to then live their best lives. So everything from, companies like L'Oreal, Deloitte, Westpac, Telstra, down to companies where it just may be a solopreneur or a sole operator. I get to really pick and choose who I get to work with, which is wonderful because I love working with high performers, with individuals and teams who are actually going to make a difference, do the work and get shit done and actually, move the needle in their own lives.
Yeah, that's a very big, what do you do?
Too much?
No, never too much, but that is a lot. But a couple of things that, one, quite selfishly, that I'd like to just hone in on a little bit. 5 books. Now, as you know, at the time this goes live, I may have completed my first draft of my book, and if I haven't, I need to kick up my own bottom for not doing so. But 5 books, that's incredible. And your latest one has been launched this year. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so my latest book is called The Life List, Master Every Moment and Live an Audacious Life. And it's coming from the perspective of, life is too short. We need to set incredible goals across every aspect of our life, and we need to live it right now. We cannot afford to put off till later all of our dreams and our wishes. And so I guess it's the concept of a life list is the opposite of a bucket list. A bucket list is, what do I want to do before I die? A life list is, what do I want to do right now while I'm still young enough to enjoy it? And I guess my first 4 books are very time management, productivity oriented in terms of how to get your time back and get your time under control. This one is, coming from the perspective of, okay, now you've got your time, how are you going to use it? Because I don't want you to use your time by sending an extra 400 emails or doing another 30 loads of washing or vacuuming the floor again. Go and live life, design an incredible life and start implementing it. So it's really a call to action to prioritize yourself and start living an incredible life right now.
It is pretty tough, though, as a small business owner to think about some days and some weeks, some months, even some years for some business owners are overwhelming and they don't get time to sit in the sun or have breakfast or take a lunch hour. So, and I know this book isn't solely focused on small business owners, but, that's my listeners' jam. So how do you reconcile that? Having a life list, but also, I guess, running the business that you want?
I think you need to go back to the basics of why you started out in business in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think with most of us, it's because for 2 reasons. We have an undying passion for a product or a service that we are able to provide, and we're phenomenally passionate about that. But secondly, certainly with most of the business owners that I have encountered, there's that element of wanting to have control over your own life and your own destiny, to have more freedom, to work when you want,
That's the
to
big
charge
word,
what you
isn't it?
want, to work with who you want, to have time with your family or the people that are most important to you. So I think that you have to bundle those 2 things together and then reconcile them against, well, actually, how am I living and how am I working? Because if I have designed this business around my passion and yet I'm working every hour that God sent me, and not being true to the fact that I went into this business for more freedom and more time and more control and more authority in my space, then there's a discord there. And so to small business owners, I would say you probably need this book more than anybody, because it's time to start prioritizing yourself. And look, I'm all for spending as much time on your business as possible. My business is one of my 3 highest values. My kids, my family, my business, and my health and well-being. That's what pretty much I design my whole life around. So I'm not saying don't work. I mean, business is my drug of choice for sure. I'm just saying we need to then balance that against everything else in our life that's most important. And sometimes it helps when someone else is kind of giving you some frameworks and some showing you the way. And it's not hard to do, but you have to rejuggle and reprioritize.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it is a struggle. And I think most business owners that you talk to, unless you were a serial entrepreneur and never have held down a job for someone else, never been an employee, we all went into business thinking that, we were going to get a bit more freedom, that we were going to be able to design our business around ourselves. And I always love that little, or I love hate that little meme that you see, I got sick of working 40 hours a week, so I started my own business and now I work 24/7. Like it's just, you see it over and over again, the burnout in the small business owner, because there is just so much to do.
That's it. And so it's about recognizing that you can still have the passion and the love for your small business, but it's also around, well, how do I manage it from a time management perspective? What are my musts? What can I reject? What can I outsource? What can I insource? What can I delegate? How do we structure our day, our week, our month, our year, so that we are working on the business and feeling phenomenally fulfilled and earning an income? I mean, let's face it, none of us are doing it just for the fun of it. So we have to prioritize those revenue generating tasks, but we also have to prioritize filling our cup in the other aspects of our lives. I don't want anyone to get to the end of their life and look back and say, well, I regret, these are my regrets. These are the things I didn't prioritize. And I wrote the life list after sort of personal family tragedy, where I was very much faced with that concept of life is too short. And I don't want anyone else to have that brutality of a tragedy to snap them out of the complacency that perhaps they're in by just working all the time. There's so much more to life.
Yeah, and it's not an unfamiliar story, is it? Where someone
Oh,
has, worked all their lives and went to retire or didn't even get to retirement age and life was just taken from them. So, yeah. Look, I know that, like I said before, that on episode 31, you were a guest, and that was very much around time management. So if you're listening and you want a little few hints and tips on time management, go back and have a listen to that episode. But we're almost mid-year as this podcast goes live. So I would really love to pick your brain around goal setting with that sort of, I guess, overarching life list type of concept, about goal setting. Obviously, there's a big push at the start of the year to set your goals. And then for some of us, we put them in the drawer and we don't look at them again. But what hints, tips, tricks can you give us around setting goals and what they should look like, both as a business owner, but also just as a human?
Yeah, so it is the perfect timing, coming into a new financial year, to have that reassessment of your business, of your life, and set those goals for the next 6 to 12 months, 2 years, 5 years. So the timing is perfect. I think when it comes to goal setting, and I set these frameworks out in the book, often when we have goals, we have this sudden burst of inspiration where we think, oh, I'm going to, climb the mountain, or I'm going to launch a new product or a new service. And we have this rush of adrenaline and it feels amazing and oh my God. And then the very next thing that happens is our brain then tells us all the reasons why we can't. And those reasons, I call them resisting forces, and they're either going to be fear or lack. So fear of failure, fear of being judged, fear of success sometimes, or lack, lack of money, lack of time, lack of resources, lack of framework. So part of what I would say, one of my clear kind of tips and tricks when it comes to goal setting is when you first set the goal, go audacious, think, oh my God, I'm going to climb to the top of the mountain. The very next step you need to take is acknowledge the fear and acknowledge the lack. So make a list of everything that's going to stop you, all those reasons that your brain tells you you can't. You want to get them out on paper so that you've got them there. The third step you then take is that you think about what it is you most value in your life. What is most important to you? And questions you can ask yourself to flush out what it is that you most value are things like, if I was really sick, what would I get out of bed for? And write a long list of things you'd get out of bed for. When I'm with my besties, what do I love talking about? And write a list of that. When I think about the person who I most admire or respect, if they were to compliment me, what would I love to have them say? And write a list. Then you go through and you put a red pen around anything where the answer comes up again and again. And so, you may have 5 things, you may have 10 things. I've got 3, my kids and my family, my kids, my sisters, my dad, my business, and my health and well-being. And those answers come up again and again to those 3 questions. And when I think about it, when I think of what I most value, every single time they're going to knock out the resisting forces. So if I think, okay, I want to climb the mountain, but I can't because I don't have time and I don't have money and I'm frightened and I might hurt myself, and I have all those fear and lack resisting forces. When I then think about it in terms of my kids and my family and how proud they'll be of me when I get to the top of the mountain and they'll be there, waving the banners, Mum, you're the best. I think about my business, how much content I will have to write, posts, blog posts, articles, frameworks, keynotes. And I think about my health and well-being and how good it's going to be for my soul and my fitness and my life to get to the top of that mountain. And when you frame it that way, the resisting forces just go away. And that allows you then to move on and actually get it done. So when it comes to goal setting, that's kind of one of the big things I'd say is understand straight away what's going to stop you and then knock it out of the park by understanding what's more important to you. Another thing I would say is don't always just focus on the audacious, magnitude of the goal in terms of, oh God, I have to get to the top of the mountain. Don't just focus on the top of the mountain, focus on each little moment that allows you to get to the top of the mountain. So every step. So don't focus on the momentous, just focus on each individual step. A moment is 90 seconds. So just like a minute is 60 seconds, a moment is a unit of time. It's 90 seconds. And there's a lot you can do in 90 seconds. So if you have that big, incredible goal, break it down into 90-second bite-sized pieces. And once you add all those moments together, you get momentum. And that is incredible, just in terms of a play on words. So, there's a couple of things to think about. Get the resisting forces out and then go into the boxing ring with what it is you value more. But also don't just always focus on the magnitude or the enormity of a huge goal. Break it up into little moments, bite-sized pieces, and chew them up and chew up the next one. And all of a sudden you've got momentum.
Yeah. That's very profound. Very, very profound. I love the play on words. It's kind of like I think that I just need a moment to sort of let that sink in. I'm going to have to listen to that again after we're finished, because now I feel like going on from that's just not really justifying what you just said. But
and I'll add to it. So the word moment has 3 definitions. So the first definition is that it's a unit of time. So it's 90 seconds. The second definition is that a moment is a unit of force. So in physics, when you open a door and the door rotates on a hinge, or a seesaw rotates on a hinge, that rotation is called a moment. The actual pivot is called a moment. The third definition is it's a unit of energy. So when an earthquake occurs, there's something called the momentum magnitude scale, and it measures the power of an earthquake. So in the book, I talk about adding those 3 types of moments together and taking 90 seconds to open a new door to create earth-shaking power, energy, and change. And if you start thinking about your goals in terms of moments and an opportunity to take 90 seconds to open a new door to make radical change in your life, how beautiful is that?
That's incredibly beautiful. Yeah, look, it's a word that we use so often, and yet I had no idea of the amount of, yes, meanings around that one single word. And I would never have guessed that a moment was 90 seconds. A moment, you
I know. Look, as a
know.
time management expert, that totally rocks my world. I just so love it. And then when you add those moments together, you get momentum. And once
Mm,
you've done that and you continue to create something momentous, there's so much
mm,
you can do with the word moment. I mean, it's in the word momentum, it's in the word momentous. You know,
mm.
let's create momentous goals and create enormous change for ourselves, just taking 90 seconds of time to open a new door.
Yeah, yeah. Look, my next question feels a little bit null and void after that conversation.
Ask away.
My next question was, what if the listeners thinking I don't set goals? Whereas now I'm thinking, even if they thought that 20 minutes ago when they started this podcast, they're no longer thinking I'm not going to be a goal setter after hearing that, because that is just putting goal setting on a totally different human level for people to sort of think about, rather than just, I've got to, do SMART goals, or I've just got to set some goals or something like that. But if by chance my listener is listening and says,
And
I'm
they're
not a
still
goal setter,
reluctant. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just not a goal setter, what advice or what nudge could you give them to go, well, you should be, and this is why?
Yeah. So I think that it's actually not that unusual to come across people who haven't set goals in the past or haven't actively set goals. And I admire them so, so, so much, because the success that they've managed to generate in their life, they've done by being in the present, being in the moment, seizing opportunities as they arise. So all power to you. But the question I would then ask you is, when you think of your success in the absence of creating goals, think about what you could be doing, the heights you
Mm,
could reach if you
mhm,
actually set goals on top of the fact that you're able to live in the present and seize the moment. Think of how there's so much more that you could be chasing after.
mm,
So I would think about it through that lens. I think it's really critical to have goals and to set goals and to continue to chase them. I think where we perhaps come unstuck, and this is probably more so from a lot of the women I come across, is that sometimes we just set the bar too high, or we constantly readjust the bar. So as we're approaching it, we just hoik it up another 2 feet, and we're constantly kind of looking up, thinking, I'm never ever going to get there. And
okay.
I think we need to have some perspective around some of the goals we're setting. They don't all have to be, I'm going to get to the top of that, the biggest mountain on earth. In the life list, I talk about chasing after goals across all aspects of your life. So not just say travel and adventure, but things like, what are my relationship goals? What are my wealth and financial goals? Health and well-being, the environment, lifestyle, giving. What are my goals around sharing my knowledge and my expertise, and helping others come up behind me? So
Mhm,
thinking of your goals across multiple components of your life, but also then thinking there's lots and lots of small goals that you can set. They don't all have to be the go after the brand new product that's going to make you $1 million next year. Some of it can be the smaller goals that just really fill your cup and make you feel like so much more well-rounded. So I urge you to chase after 3 different types of goals. Actually, there's the go big goals, which are the outrageous, climb the mountain, make $1 million. There's the go small goals, which are the smaller, life affirming, just lovely things that you can set up for a month that would fall outside of your normal business as usual. And then there's the go now goals, which is that opportunistic, something arises and you just think, I'm doing it. I'm just going to jump and I'm going to do it. And I'm just going to kind of build the parachute on the way down. If you go for those three, if you have those three types of goals kind of floating around in your head, it just makes life more fun, Jen.
Mm, yeah, I must say that I am the go now goal person. I love to just build the parachute as I'm jumping off the cliff type of thing. I don't think it always serves me well, but it is, I guess, the type of personality that I have. I think my mentor for many years, used to say, ready, fire, aim. Just, you know, get ready, fire it, and just do it as you go.
Yeah,
You make
ready,
it up as you
fire, aim.
go
I love
along.
it. Yeah. For
So,
sure. And I think partly with me, because of being a productivity time management expert, I've gotten so good at saying no. I've got so
mm,
good at enforcing my boundaries to honor and respect my own time that I think prior to writing the book, I almost got myself into a place where nothing was happening unless it was planned and it was part of a
mm,
strategy. And
okay.
so it's then forced me to actually be more spontaneous and to seize the moment. So, I was almost the opposite of where you are. And so I had to work on that muscle to make sure that I was being a little bit more spontaneous. So for you, maybe you think, okay, well, now I need to perhaps set some of those bigger long-term goals or some
Mhm.
more short-term goals. So I think there's value in understanding what type of goal setter you are and challenging yourself to operate outside of that comfort zone.
Mm, yes, yeah, absolutely. So much gold comes from the comfort zone. Um, so my next question, which I think you might have just answered, I'm not quite sure if you can see my question list. This is not working well. I'm going to ask you a question, but it was really, I guess, circling back to the life list. And, my question was, what was the one thing that you learned that you didn't know before you started writing the book? And perhaps it was that, the fact that things weren't happening for you unless you planned them. But is there anything else that you kind of learnt through the process of writing the book?
Oh, look, I think that 100% there was a lot of personal growth in writing the book.
Mhm,
Um, the the book arose from um, my former partner, who I was married to for 22 years, father of our three amazing children. We separated probably about 5 years ago,
mhm,
and I really threw myself into my business because kind of the buck stopped with me. I didn't want to go back into the corporate world. I had to make my business successful. Um,
mhm,
and, and I threw myself into my kids and looking after my kids. That was it. It was my business and my kids, and that was it.
mhm,
And then as we approached, as COVID hit, I think we went into lockdown or COVID kind of, the World Health Organization announced it as a global pandemic in March 2020. In April 2020, Dan was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and 11 months later, he had passed away, and he was
wow.
only 54. And it was obviously an incredibly brutal experience for my children, for me, for the whole family. Um, what I learned though in writing the book was that I found it incredibly cathartic to write about our separation and then to write about his death. And it wasn't something that I had allowed myself to experience. And I hadn't realized that until I started writing the book, that I hadn't really sat with the loss and I hadn't I hadn't processed the whole experience. So sitting there and writing the first part of the book, which is around the loss of losing Dan twice, essentially,
Mhm,
um, I learned a lot about myself. I found it very cathartic. It was very healing. It allowed me to acknowledge, you know, not only the loss but also my involvement in our marriage separation. Which at that point it was so much easier for me to say, well, he left; it was all his fault.
mhm,
But it wasn't, and so I think the process of writing just generally was a huge learning curve for me, huge learning process, and I think that you don't have to write a book to get that experience. I think it's really important, I think, to journal, to express gratitude, to think about your day and all the good things that have occurred and the bad things that have occurred. And so I think that I am much more reflective these days. I do now, as when I go to bed every single night, I express my gratitude, because life is too short. I turned 53 2 weeks ago. He was 54 when he died.
Wow.
And so every single day it gets to the end of the day and I express my gratitude for everything that I'm grateful for, which I've never done before. And even when you've had a shitty day and you can't really think of too many things you're grateful for, that nothing else, I think, oh, I'm so grateful because I'm lying in my flannelette sheets and I could finally go to sleep. But I learned a lot, and I wish I had probably journaled and explored my feelings earlier, but I'm glad I've done it now.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for being so open and honest. Yeah, that's incredible. Um,
And look, let me just say, as I said, I'm 53. We've all got a backstory, Jen.
yeah.
No one. It's not like my tragedy is more tragic than your tragedy or someone else's tragedy. You don't get through life and being a parent and a partner and a daughter and a sister or brother or whatever it is you are. You don't get to our stage of life without having a backstory. We've all got a backstory. What's really important, though, that I reflected on with writing the book was that the backstory might have shaped me, but it doesn't dictate my future story. I'm the one who dictates my future story.
Hmm.
And that's the same for anyone listening who has had
Hmm.
their own personal tragedy. That doesn't define you. It's helped to shape you, but you get to choose from today onwards what tomorrow looks like.
Yeah, yeah, which is a great segue into what's on the life list for you. What's next? What's on the life list?
So I've got, look, there's always lots of things on the go. And it's not always, as I said, it's not just travel and adventure. I've just written my giving policy with my business around the charities and the organisations I want to support and my commitment to them and how I will support them with my time, my knowledge, my expertise, with sharing stories about them through my channels and networks. So that's been a big one that I've just ticked off. I am flirting with being a digital nomad. So I'm heading off to Bali for 7 weeks in mid-July, and I'm going to live and work there and just see how it goes. So
Wow.
yeah, that's a big one. And I just sent an email to a prospective client today where they reached out and talked about working with me mid-year. And it's the first time I've sent an email saying, well, that all sounds really great, but just so you know, from mid-July until the end of August, I'll be working remotely from Bali. So any work we do will be via Zoom. If you want to do face-to-face, it'll have to be outside that period of time. And I just thought, this is great. I'm in control of my own destiny. So
Mm.
that's on the cards. I'm learning to surf when I'm in Bali, which will be exciting. So if anyone's listening and they want to come to Bali and learn to surf with me, send me a DM. And my best friend and I, Katrina, are just talking about what our next hike is going to be. We like to do a big hike every year. So we're thinking Flinders Ranges this year. So lots on there, but also lots of little things, things like I'm not going to vacuum as often. I'm not going to bash myself up if I order takeaway 3 nights in a row because I'm just too tired to cook.
Mhm.
I'm going to tell the kids to step up and help clean the house. And if they don't, then they can pay me $50 each a week. And that's not rent, that's housekeeping money,
Yep.
just making decisions to be true to myself and the way I want to live from now on.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's great. I have a house cleaner and I just love her. Like going through the pandemic and not being able to have a house cleaner during the pandemic was the worst thing ever. That is
I know.
my little thing that I treat myself to
So
technically
good.
every
Yeah.
single week.
Good girl. I love it. Look, I did for ages and ages, but then I came full circle because I got to the point where I realized my kids who are I've got one's a teenager I've got 2 boys in their very early 20s and my daughter she's 19. And I sort of got to the point where I realized that they were just taking the piss with me having the cleaner. of not having to do anything. And so I got rid of the cleaner and said, no, this is, we all step up. Everyone has to participate. Everyone, family's a team sport. Who's doing what? And I crack it every now and then when the house is, the bomb's gone off and they get scared because they think they're going to have to part with their hard-earned cash. And then we cycle through that again a month later.
Yes. Yeah, I tried that bit during the pandemic, the children, because my kids are very similar age. But look, I'd rather they come and spend some time out in the sunshine with me and do some gardening or have a cup of tea than to help me vacuum. So,
Good. No,
and
that's good. My kids will probably hear that and they'd like to move in with you. Because they say to me, why do you always pick the nicest day of the week to make us clean? I said, but if we all do it together, it'll be faster.
I'm glad you said fast and not fun. I thought you were going to say fun there for a sec.
No. We all know it's not fun.
No, definitely not fun.
Life skills.
That's
What's
it.
next on your life list, Jen?
Gosh, I don't know. I need to get deep into this book and put it out there. But I guess my children are very similar age. So, school's no longer a thing. That's something that is sort of coming more and more at me. I'm having more and more conversations in social circles and I get to switch off. It's just like, this doesn't affect me anymore. And
It's
I
great,
don't have an
isn't it?
opinion on this anymore and things like that. So I think, life is definitely changing. I'm 49 this year, and life is definitely changing for me. My husband and I, we went to Melbourne for the weekend the other week, last week to see Ursula Carlson at the Comedy Festival.
Oh, great.
And it's kind of like, we could have not, but why not?
Yeah, that's it. We're at that stage in our life where all of a sudden we've got more time again and a bit more freedom, and we get to redesign what we want it to look like. Now, it's a period of huge transformation this age in terms of if you've got children and if they're starting to kind of empty nest or at least be more independent where you don't have to be there to make sure they don't cut their fingers off when they're cutting the carrots up. We've got time, we've got opportunity, and that's why I want you to use this time to design what the rest of your life looks like. I liken it to that sort of 2 months, that summer after finishing university, where you've got no responsibility, no care, the sun's shining, it's 2 months before you start your first real job. There's nothing that you have to worry about. That's what this moment in my life feels like, except now I've also got money, whereas I didn't have any money then. So, there's lots of choices. It's great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. This has been such a great chat, Kate. We've gone full circle, I think, in different conversations. So hopefully my listener has enjoyed listening to it as much as I've enjoyed chatting with you. But for my listener who might want to buy the book or get in contact with you or have a look at what else that you do, what else you offer, where's the best place to find you and where's the best place to find your book?
So you can find me under my name. So Kate Christie is my website.com.au, and there's a whole heap of information there. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook. In terms of the book, it's currently available everywhere, in all great bookstores, online with Booktopia and Amazon. For any international listeners, Amazon's probably your best bet. Barnes and Noble in the US, so it's available sort of readily everywhere, which is exciting. It's wonderful.
That's very exciting. I will have all those links in the show notes for sure. But that's very exciting. I can't wait to see what the next few months brings, and I'm watching with great delight at everything that you're doing. So thank you so much for giving up your time and having a bit of a chat on the podcast today.
It was a pleasure. Thanks so much, Jen, and best of luck with your book. I'm very excited for you.
I'm sure that I will be tapping into your knowledge. How good was that? How good was Kate's explanation around what a moment is? That blow my socks off. This woman, I swear, I loved this chat with Kate. She's an inspiring woman and someone I have the pleasure of having in my world as a business friend, to which I find very privileged. All the links to Kate's website and socials are, of course, in the show notes at allthews social media and marketing.com.au/252. Kate does hang out in my like-minded business owners Facebook group. So if you have any questions, head over there, tag her, and I'm sure she'll be more than willing to help and answer any queries that you might have. And of course, if you want to talk marketing rather than life lists, get in contact with me. There's a link in the show notes to make an appointment to come and have a chat, or DM me, email me, send me carrier pigeons, whatever you'd like. Get in touch. But that is it for another episode, for episode 252. If you loved this episode and found it valuable, please A, leave me a rating and a review. I would absolutely love that if you can do that where you're listening to this podcast. And B, get in contact with Kate and let her know what you thought of her chat with me, and maybe even buy her book and make yourself a life list. I will, of course, be back next week on the podcast for episode 253. Thanks again to Kate Toon and her new book, Six Figures in School Hours, which, of course, you can find on Kate's website. So if you head to allthews, and yeah, thanks, Kate, for sponsoring another episode. In the meantime, if we aren't hanging out on social, let's get social on social. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and of course, LinkedIn. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peep, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
No time like the present. Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.